Brody, get the rest of those people on board that carrier.
On it.
Avengers, it's time to work for a living.
First step, bring in your footage. I shot this on a black background with really nice lighting on the subject's face. We're going to create a mask around the face of the subject. We really want just his face. So you can go in as close as possible here. We're going to feather the mask. We're going to scale it up. And we're going to tweak this in a second. In the description, you will find a link to download a couple files to help you out. One of those files is the bridge file. It's just a PNG image. Go ahead and drag that in. We're going to use this later on in the tutorial, but right now we're just going to grab our letterboxes real quick. And this is just like a very simple way to do it. Just create a shape layer for black with no stroke. And then duplicate and bring the position down to the bottom. Pre-compose those two layers. You can call it letterbox. Doesn't matter what you call it though. We can delete the bridge for now. We don't need it. We won't need it for a while. So you can position this now whichever way you want. My subject does turn his head down, so we want to make sure that his lips are not getting cut off by the letterbox. I went ahead and changed the color a little bit, gave him some more depth, made it look a little glowy. You can see here that it really is going to help sell the effect once we put in the HUD elements, as well as some lumetri color, just to give it a better look. And you can really experiment and figure out the best way it looks in your particular setup. This video is more just about the HUD setup, not how to color. Great, so now we're going to add the elements, the HUD elements, and this is where you can also get a lot more creative. You can find things online, you can create them yourself. I'm just going to take some from a plugin that I have. All right, so I added them in. Make sure they're below. Make sure all your elements are obviously below your letterbox layer. I positioned them in 3D space to make them look to where they are more in line with the viewer and the subject, the way he's looking. And I added a bulge effect and a blur to really sell the depth and the curvature of the helmet. And I did that for both elements. And it really helps sell the effect. So I took a screenshot of the part we're recreating for Rhodey, and I kind of just took a little bit of him. I didn't take the whole thing because it just wasn't going to fit, and I didn't want Iron Man's face here, RDJ's face on, covering or kind of showing up in any way. So I created the perspective in 3D space, so I made it a 3D layer. I masked it out, and then when I put the mask back on, you can see it's just him. I also added some opacity keyframes, and this is going to give the illusion that it is kind of flickering on. And this is going to allow for just more dynamics throughout the piece. And then the same thing for it to exit the screen. All right, so let's see what we have so far.
Brody, get the rest of those people on board that carrier. Avengers, it's time.
Okay, great. So now that we have that, we can take I took the position of the Z-axis of our subject, and I zoomed him out. You could scale it too if you'd like. I'm just working in 3D space here, so I just did it that way. And he's going to zoom out a little bit, and this will end up matching with the bridge part of the effect. So we're going to have this main effect here with our subject. We're going to have, which then zooms out and matches up with the bridge layer that we're going to have to then bridge us to the Iron Man section of the effect. So there's going to be these three main parts here, and I started with this, and then I took our two or however many layers of HUD elements that you have, and I zoomed those out a little bit to accommodate for the zoom. And then by this time we'll be in the transition, so you won't really have to worry about the elements. The next thing we have to do though is we have to track, we have to make some tracking data so we can move these elements with our character as he moves his face, as he talks, and as his eyes and facial features move. The elements will adapt to that. So to do that, make a new layer, null object. We'll go to our go to window, tracker, if it's not already selected. And we're going to track motion. We can track really anything. Track this spot here. Hit play. Once your tracking data is complete, just hit apply. Okay. Cool. So now we have our tracking data on our null object, and we can parent our HUD effects to the null object. We can actually call this tracking data. So for me, there's three. There's the right, we have the ring, the data, and we have Rhodey. So now when I play
Brody,
you can
get the rest of those people on board that carrier.
Around with
Avengers.
the character. So you're welcome to move around these elements to better fit the tracking data. Say you want this one a little higher because just the way it moves, and maybe you want it tilted a little differently. Completely up to you and the way it looks.
Brody,
but now we
get the rest of those people on board that
nice
carrier.
movement.
Avengers, it's time to work for a living.
And now we have our zoom out. Great, so now we're going to go into the bridge, which will then connect us to the final part of the Iron Man clip. We're going to take our bridge element, and we're going to start it just about a frame before our final push out, our final zoom out of our subject. We're going to take that and we're going to duplicate the bridge layer, so now we have two. We're going to take our top layer, and we're going to draw a mask around kind of like this lighter color area. So we have a mask here, and then we're going to take that mask and we're going to invert it. Okay, that didn't really do anything. That's because we have this bridge layer here, but if we unselect that, you could see we now have our subject. You can make this a little nicer. And this is where, if it doesn't line up with the Iron Man, you can adjust the scaling, or if you're using the Z-axis to kind of match up his face with this circular area. Great. Feather this out. We're going to turn this bridge back on, and we're going to go to opacity. We're going to drop it down just a little bit, just so you can see his face. And if you masked it enough, you're not going to have any harsh. You're not going to have any harsh lines here. This should last just a frame, so we can cut these two, get rid of them. Then you can bring your Iron Man footage, and you'll want to match your bridge frame, with the next frame of the shot. So it depends on where you find your footage. So it's not going to match. So I'm not going to give you a frame. So just kind of play with it, and whatever ends up looking natural, then you could select that. So now we have this.
Living.
So now if your bridge lines up with your shot and your character matches the general area of the face, you'll have this very nice smooth transition right into the actual scene of the movie, which looks really cool, frame by frame there. And because we matched the letterboxes earlier in the tutorial, everything matches. All right, so I ended up adding some sound effects and the music to this whole thing, and now we have our finished product.
Brody, get the rest of those people on board that carrier.
On it.
Avengers, it's time to work for a living.
Cool. And that's how you make an Iron Man HUD HUD with the transition into the actual suit from Age of Ultron. Really cool. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching.